we might get started. There may be still people arriving, but we're going to start with introductions and what have you. So no one's going to miss out on too much if people are still being led into the room. So welcome to the virtual user group meeting for APAC in March 2021. Hope everybody's well, survived lockdown, and, you know, depending where you are in the world, hopefully coming back to a little bit of normality now, and you never know, maybe before too long we can start doing some of these in person. But for now, we're still in remote world, and yeah, fantastic to have you all here. So I'm just going to kick off with a bit of an overview of what we're going to cover today. So high-level agenda, we're going to have a welcome and introductions. I'm going to introduce Bhavika from Momentum Energy, and I'll talk more about that in a little while. Q&A session based on what Bhavika is going to talk about, and then I'm going to cover a Snowflake product roadmap session, and again followed by a Q&A, and then we will definitely be wrapped up by 3 o'clock at the latest. So introductions. I'll read right to left and introduce myself first. I'm Paul Field, sales engineer with Snowflake. Been in the world of data and analytics for best part of my career. I won't say how long that is. I'll give away my age. Too long, let's put it that way. Bhavika is the head of data for Momentum Energy, and she's got lots of experience working across a lot of different areas of data. That includes big data, data lineage, data quality and governance, architecture, through to, you know, the front-end analytics pieces. So a really experienced professional. And she's also very active in encouraging women in data, which is, you know, a fantastic area to be involved in these days. And yeah, also mentors young people progressing their career. So, you know, really proactive in the community, and very excited to have her with us today. A little bit of housekeeping. So, you know, the general idea of Snowflake user groups, and any user group for that matter, is really about sharing, right? So feel free, please, to put your questions in the chat window. I mean, of course, Zoom, right? It's Zoom. It's not as interactive as we would like it to be, but let's try and, you know, make the most of it to whatever extent we can. So if you could, you know, feel free to give applause, raise your hands, give thumbs up, etc., etc. if you hear something good that's interesting. And yeah, please do feel free to send through your questions when they occur to you. Like, we'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end, but you know, feel free to send that question through as and when it occurs to you as Bhavika is talking, and we'll keep a track of them and you know, ask Bhavika them at the end. Please do keep yourself on mute. You know, just so that we don't hear the dog barking. You might hear my dog bark, but unfortunately I can't put myself on mute, so we'll just have to live with that. Yeah, and you know, the idea of these groups, you know, it's to expand our network. I mean, again, it's limited what we can do in that sense, given it's remote, but you know, feel free to reach out to myself if you do have any questions after the session on LinkedIn. If I can help out, I will. And of course, to develop our skill set, right? To learn from Bhavika's experience, and you know, other people in the community. So yeah, feel free. I mean, I've covered quite a few of these anyway, but do feel free to put your camera on if you feel so inclined. You're not obliged to, but yeah, I mean, feel free to. It would be nice to see who's around, but yeah, again, if you don't want to, I completely understand. We are all a little zoomed out, I think, these days, so you know, be fantastic to see you, but no pressure there. And that's basically it for introductions. I'm going to hand over to Bhavika and stop sharing, and she will start sharing her screen.
Checking. Can you see my screen?
Yep, all good here, Bhavika.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm very pleased to present how our data strategy delivers for our business and customers. So to start with Momentum Energy, I work at Momentum Energy as head of data. Momentum Energy is a division of Hydro Tasmania. one of Australia's leading clean energy and its largest generator of renewable energy. Momentum Energy is a leading supplier of electricity and gas solution to business customers and residential market across Australia, providing competitive rates and quality sustainable products and services. Momentum Energy sells electricity generated from renewable energy to more than 250,000 customers across the continent. So today I'm going to talk about our journey to Snowflake, how we actually got Snowflake on board and how we adapted it and how we actually progress further and lead to our path of success. So one of Momentum Energy's vision is to make energy more human. As a company, we have one main goal, and it's making energy simple for our customers. We know that this industry can be pretty tricky, so we are working on the ways to fix that. The more we can do to make things easier to understand for our customer, the better. The best way we can understand our customer is through analyzing the data they provide us through feedback calls and other means. Hence, as a retailer, we want to harness a data warehousing and analytics in an innovative and unusual ways, with the defined objective to serve our customers better and enhance their experience. Data warehousing and analytics provide numerous benefits, such as operation efficiency, favorable customer experience, loyalty, and retention of customers. Having our vision in mind and goal to become a data-driven business, we as a group assess the current architecture at Momentum Energy. The first and the foremost important thing was to get our data right, as in to get a strategy that can align to our vision. And to do that, these are the 5 principles that we based our data strategy on. The first and the foremost is to get our data aligned to deliver our business objectives. And the data strategy that we developed, it was quite unique and quite purposeful, specifically designed for our business. At the same time, the data that we captured, we wanted to be actionable with the deliverables or the milestones that we can measure against and understand how much we could achieve. At the same time, being in the energy world, we know that the regulations and there are constantly new changes and the new requirements coming on board. So we wanted to have a data strategy which is constantly evolving and can meet all the future needs of the business. Lastly, to support this, we wanted a right team which has more of data advisors that I call rather than data architect, who can actually understand how the data impacts the business rather than this is the way the data should be structured on. So based on this principle, we analyzed what was currently available. So for years, For years, Momentum Energy had its data architecture in an on-premise enterprise data warehouse. A traditional architecture built on SQL Server stack. However, the company experienced challenges getting data into the system from its source system and getting reporting on the data done on a timely manner. The SQL Server database integration and transformation solution was initially designed in SSIS. It required a sizable data team to maintain and manage the process. Reporting and analysis was often time-consuming activity, especially something as high volume as interval meter data or usage data from the field. Designing and maintaining ETL workload and integration required a lot of coding. Keeping in mind the vision, goal, and challenges with the existing data warehousing technologies, Momentum decided to move to a cloud-based data architecture. By modernizing cloud data architecture, we were hoping to do several things. First, build a cloud-based reporting and business intelligence platform that could give timely insights on different aspects and factors of our source data from systems like Salesforce. Create a fast, flexible, scalable ETL system that required very little time and intervention from developers. Shorten the time it would take to get data from source system into the cloud warehouse and then into the business intelligence platforms. In order for us to achieve our objectives, Momentum Energy decided to modernize to Snowflake Cloud Data Lakehouse using Matillion to get the data to the cloud and transform it using the power of Snowflake. Microsoft Power BI rounded out the stack as company's cloud business intelligence platform. In order for us to justify the benefits of the new architecture, we ran a proof of concept using a largest data set, interval metadata. Interval metadata is the usage data that we receive from market every 15 minutes. In future, it will be 5 minutes. Hence, it requires a lot of capacity and data crunching. The saving in time and resource to do analysis on interval metadata was significant. Furthermore, using Salesforce data, it just took us 6 weeks to have end-to-end solution running with Matillion ETL, Snowflake, and Power BI, where the company had data flowing through and was capturing analytics. As we had a lot of data, it was very important for us to organize the data into a way that it is usable, and going forward, it is very easy for us to manage. So we call it as our data lakehouse, where we have data structured in various zones. We call it raw zone, where it is pretty much like a data lake, which is completely raw. Gold is where we clean the data a little bit. And the work is where there is more business specific data that we have, which is available for the wider business. At the same time, we take data sensitivity and privacy as the biggest concern. That's why we store our sensitive data separately, so that we manage all the privacy and the data, sensitive data, more efficiently. This is the roadmap to our data success. As a first step, we organized our data in the data lake. Second, we want to enable ourselves so that the data is available for self-service. And the last thing, with all the upcoming projects like CDR and 5-minute settlement and all, we want it to be available for integration or to the wider world when required. Lastly, since we had so much data, we need to have a strict governance model based on where the data lies and what are the different zones where we have our data in. We have different level of governance available. As you can see in the data engineering, we have got minimal governance, but at the same time, when a business analysts are accessing the data, which is our goal layer, we have a heavy governance built in there so that we are maintaining and managing our data in the most efficient manner. As next steps, now that Momentum Energy has the new cloud data stack and data lake implemented, the company plans to focus on increasing the amount of data transformation it is doing and incorporating more data sources, more models, and other data scenarios to even become more insight-driven. Thank you. Over to you, Paul.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Bhavika. That was fantastic. So yeah, we've got a couple of questions coming in. I've been keeping a list. Let me just flick to those. So first one is, generally speaking, what benefits have you seen from adopting Snowflake, but also, your wider product stack in terms of Matillion and everything? What sort of benefits have you seen from the overall approach and strategy you've taken?
The best thing that we have got is the speed, the time the request comes in and to deliver it. It has been fantastic. And then there is not a huge number of team who is actually involved in managing the whole end-to-end process. The things are seamless. And the value that normally we want to derive out of this analytics and data is much quicker than what it used to be in our old stack and the old technologies that we had.
Fantastic. So, to I mean, tell me if I've got this wrong, but to sort of, restate that you've seen, much quicker in terms of development, but also in terms of access to data. So business users are getting benefits in terms of response times to, data requests, etc. as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Fantastic. On the other side of the fence, if you like, so, that's benefits. I won't say no projects, but not many projects, certainly with a new technology stack, go without some challenges. What challenges did you face throughout the projects?
There was a lot of resistance because Snowflake was new when we adapted. I think we were the first utility company to adapt or take Snowflake as a POC. So we did have a lot of resistance in the business, and a couple of them didn't want to move away from the traditional data warehouse that we had. As they were saying, it's quite streamlined. We didn't want to move. But more and more things we started to develop, and the way we started to progress in our journey, the people started to see the benefits. As one of our biggest data set, that is the time of use data, initially people had to wait for days to actually get the data for the whole month to be able to do something with it. Whereas having Snowflake in place, they can literally get the data with a click of a button, and then they can analyze, and then they can do, the things that they would like to do initially with the time of use data. Fantastic. So it has been fantastic in that, user could experience it themselves. So that was really, really beneficial for the business as well as the user experience.
Yeah, fantastic. And on that, you mentioned in the early days there were some doubters, if we want to put it that way. Have they been, for the most part, converted now that they've sort of experienced the platform?
Yes, everyone loves Snowflake. Everything is like, is this report coming from Snowflake? Can we make it go faster at times? If there is some lag with any XYZ reason, they would be like, Snowflake is there. It should be able to resolve this. So now everybody knows our data warehouse as Snowflake rather than a data warehouse, I would say. So it's that popular, even with our business users. So I'm quite happy that the change has gone right till the business end user, so they know the technology that we use as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And, I think, it's great to hear, but it also brings in sort of new challenges, doesn't it? Right. It's, expectations have changed. Like, why doesn't my report take, it should be under a second. It's taking 2 seconds. That's ridiculous. Yeah.
Sometimes I have to explain it's the report. It's not the technology. Sometimes you need to structure your data properly. So all that comes into the picture.
Absolutely. Are there, in terms of, your approach that you've taken so far and, the learnings you have had, I mean, you mentioned you've got upcoming projects. Is there anything you would do differently, either, if you could have your time again, or anything that you would take into consideration, for those upcoming projects that you might tweak things a little?
Tweak, yes. It's just the way that, we started our journey just a little bit, but overall, I'm very happy with it. So it's like further refining it, I would say. But whatever we have got right now, it's just beautiful. Like literally, I'm very proud of what we could achieve in such a short time. As an overall thing, it's just minor tweaks here and there that you learn, maybe more auditing we should have added, or more this thing that we should have added. So those basic bits and pieces, but overall, we're very, very happy with the end product that we have developed so far.
Yeah, fantastic. You did touch on 5-minute settlement, and I know that's you're in the energy industry. I'm not, so correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that's a requirement to be in place by end of the year. Is that right?
That's right.
I realize it's probably limited in terms of, confidentiality, how much detail you can give us there, but broadly speaking, is there anything you can tell us about your plans to tackle that?
To be honest, we are ready. Okay. Because we did the process, and we are quite keen to participate as well when they release out to the retailers. And I would say we are in that position because we had this technology stack. Without going into too much detail, the way we have built it in a way that tomorrow, if they send us a minute as well, we are quite prepared. And because we can scale up and down quite easily in Snowflake, we are quite okay to handle that load of data, and plus having our framework on top just makes it quite easier and quite streamlined.
Great. I'm going to jump into Zoom and see if we've had any more questions. But another one that just occurred to me actually is, I'm guessing most people on this call are probably Snowflake customers, but just in case we do have anyone who's just interested and isn't a customer, but maybe is looking at options, what advice would you give them in terms of, and this isn't a sales pitch, it's not just choose Snowflake. What genuine advice would you give somebody in terms of how to assess, what might be the right option for them?
I would say definitely do a POC on, whatever video pain points, like for us, interval meter data. Analyzing that using SQL Server was not possible, pretty much. It was really time consuming. So something like that, if you go with a POC, you can experience it yourself. Plus, we always had excellent support from Snowflake team as well, through and through. When we had any roadblocks or when we had any issues while connectivity or further exploring things, we always reached out to the Snowflake support team, and they helped us as well through and through. So I would say, POC, when you do it, you get end-to-end experience, not only how you're going to use it, but how well you'll be supported through as well. So
fantastic. No, that's great advice. Okay, I'd kept a log of questions in a little notepad, and I've been ignoring Zoom, but we've got a whole heap of questions here. So apologies to those when I've been hogging things. But let me jump into some of these. So are there any IoT data coming in and any real-time processing with streams, etc., that you're handling or planning to handle?
In future, yes, maybe, depending on how the rate comes through and all the new things that there are on the cards. But at the moment, we don't have any IoT data which is coming through. Okay,
cool. And sort of on a similar-ish line, what sort of data types are you working with? Is everything structured? Are you working with semi-structured data? What does that look like in your current landscape?
At the moment, we have got semi-structured data, at the same time structured data at this stage. So we don't have much of unstructured data to work with. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And a question on your data pipelines, pros and cons in terms of Matillion versus using SSIS?
Matillion is very, very easy to adapt. At the same time, it works seamlessly with Snowflake. And it was very easy for the developers to adapt to Matillion as well, because they have quite similarities in there. And it was quite easy and cost efficient as well. Well, that's why we chose Matillion as our ETL tool. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So if anybody is looking at that, you would say, I'm interpreting slightly from that, but there's a fair amount of similarity. So if you're skilled in SSIS or some other GUI-based ETL tool, it's probably going to be quite easy to pick up.
Yep, definitely. Yes.
Cool. Another one on the sort of overall stack, Power BI as your BI platform. How was the integration with that and Snowflake, and what's the experience been like?
It works seamlessly. Initially, we did have issues because of the private link and all, but as I said, Snowflake team was very, very supportive to help us get through that. That was more like our infrastructure side. But yeah, overall Power BI works seamlessly without any issues with Snowflake. Even the larger data sets we could easily run using direct queries. So the queries actually executed in Snowflake, and Power BI was just used as a presentation tool. It worked quite seamlessly, and we could handle large amount of data there as well.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these keep rolling in. Sorry, Bhavika, we're going to keep you busy. It's good. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. The whole idea here is engagement, so this is great. Do users include customers? Is it a purely internal use case, or are you sharing this data externally to customers, partners, etc.?
No, it's purely internal use. customers as in internal customers, the departments,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
they request the data. So we're not giving any of our data to external customers.
Do you have any plans around that at this stage?
No, not at this stage. We don't have any plans.
I guess you've got your hands pretty full with the 5-minute settlement. Yeah, you'll
and
be pretty
PDR
busy.
coming
Yeah,
up, PDR,
yeah.
which is coming up, which is again going to be a huge project in itself. So yeah.
Absolutely. What else have we got here? So this is a bit of a, I guess a guesstimate type question, but what would a rough timeline would you put for SQL Server to Snowflake migration? I guess, it depends on how you define the start and the actual end, but, in terms of your experience, how quick was that?
It took about 6 to 8 weeks for us to get the data into the very raw form, based on our critical systems that we wanted. Again, how you prioritize it and what you're really interested, all that, the timeline varies. But if you're just getting the data and if you've got a right framework, then it's pretty quick and pretty seamless, I would say. But again, how you define, how you do, it's all depend on the person driving it and the way you plan it and the way, what would you say you have achieved? For us, getting the data there was a first milestone that we were very happy to achieve. So that's why I would say 6 to 8 weeks we got to that stage. And then the next build started, the business layer and the other goal layer and the work layer started after that. So
yeah, and I think, to add my sort of 2 cents to that, it's, one thing is that's still super quick. That's 6 to 8 weeks is nothing in the scheme of things. But also, I think your approach makes a lot of sense. You don't need to boil the ocean and try and deliver everything in one massive project where the business aren't going to see any ROI for however long. If you can get some small wins on the board and get, excitement, adoption, interest in the product, and when I say product, I don't necessarily mean Snowflake. I mean your product as the data you're showcasing. I think that helps in terms of that internal selling as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like we could quickly deliver some of the analytics, which, business would take days in the old frame, old setup. So they could see the benefit, and that's where, more and more interest and more benefits they could see. And then they started to support the change. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. A follow-on from the question related to SSIS, and I don't know if you'll have insights to this, Bhavika, but let me put it to you anyway. But have you evaluated Azure Data Factory as opposed to Matillion?
We haven't, because we don't have any Azure products at our end, so we didn't evaluate that. We had a couple of others with Matillion, but Matillion sort of did the job that we wanted. That's why Matillion was put on the board.
Yeah, fair enough. And I figured as much. As you know, I'm reasonably close to what you guys have been doing, so I thought that was likely the situation. Mm-hmm. Another one, sort of on the data engineering side of things. Was there any resistance, assuming you've been doing this, to writing stored procedures in JavaScript? From presumably when you had stored procs in SQL Server, they were all SQL based, and you've moved those to JavaScript stored procedures. What was the data engineers or whoever's been involved in that process, DBAs, whoever it was, what was their thoughts and resistance and challenges that you might have had to face around that?
Couple of them didn't like it, I'll be honest. They were like, oh, we wish, we had our old SQL. It's so easy to do things. But the way we started to structure our business layer, we didn't quite require so much of stored procedures in there, which made our life much, much easier. At the same time, my data engineers as well got happy. But a couple of them, yes, they're pretty good with JavaScript. They handled the load pretty much for us when we really needed the stored procedures to be written.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I think it's fair to say you don't need to be a JavaScript expert to write a stored proc in Snowflake. I mean, I've managed to do it, and nobody would want me designing a website. Let's put it that way. So,
we had our templates as well prepared. So in future, if someone wants to write, the base is there. You just modify and to change it, and you can reuse it as well.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think this sort of has some overlap to an earlier question, but it is a little different. If the raw and staging data does not have sensitive data, will it have IoT and interval data?
It will have IoT data. The raw level has everything for us, and then because raw level is only accessed by our data engineers, so it has it, and from there we separate the data out, as in what requires to go into the gold layer and all the other layers that we.
So it becomes fit for purpose and consumption layers thereafter with aggregations, enrichment, etc. Yeah,
that's right. Yep.
Yeah. On the sensitive data question though, is there anything sensitive that you've had to deal with? Have you had to sort of use any data masking or anything along those lines?
Yes, we had to. Obviously, we deal with customer data, which comes with a lot of sensitive data in it. So we did do data masking and things like that.
Yeah. So how much? So this is, I guess, more a question on the it's a follow-on from that previous question, but on the stored procedures side of things, how much were you invested in T-SQL and stored procedures? The comment is that it could make things tricky, that migration path, if you had a lot of, IP, if we want to put it that way, it built into those stored procs. But, you said you didn't have to do a lot of stored procedures in Snowflake. Was that because Matillion solved a lot of that logic for you?
Yes. So we did most of our transformation in Matillion. Exactly right, Paul. So that's where, it eliminated the need to write all the stored procedures into Snowflake. And we didn't do a lift and shift. The way we have structured our data in Snowflake, it's quite different to the way we had it in our traditional EDW or enterprise data warehouse. So that way, it eliminated the need of writing those T-SQL, having in mind that, in future, managing and maintaining that might be a problem as well. So we tried to keep most of the transformation in Matillion and then got into Snowflake so that it's easily manageable. And going forward, we can expand it if we have to.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm losing track of where I'm up to in this question list. Where are we? Okay. So how did you manage around duplicate data reads coming from AMO? This seems to be from somebody who's familiar with the industry, obviously, but considering that the IMD tables are in billions or tens of billions of rows and soon to be even larger.
Yeah, I can certainly say this is coming from someone in the industry. Yes, we had to follow those models, where A read can be, sorry, I'm going into too much of detail, but where we have S read, A read. So we went into the detail and we developed that logic in a way that, the duplicates can be handled. In our raw level, we had duplicates, and then the further logic, which is available on the AMO website, which read gets replaced by what, we got that logic and then we handled it into our gold layer, or, that's the second layer where we had only the clean reads coming through for further analysis.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously an industry specific type question, but it isn't, right? Because that level of specificity is very industry specific, but having duplicates, it certainly isn't. That's pretty not exactly an uncommon problem. So no, fantastic to hear about how you dealt with that. Question on why you chose Snowflake as opposed to, it says versus AWS as your native data warehouse solutions here, but I guess, broadly speaking, against anything else you may have been considering.
We did analyze and we found SQL, because Snowflake is SQL based, it will be easy for us to adapt since, we had Microsoft SQL Server before. And the POC was the real eye opener for all of us. It delivered what it said. So we were quite happy with it. And we started quite small and then we could expand it further. So that's why Snowflake was kind of our choice. And I'm happy that we made that choice. So yeah. So it turned out to be really well with all this technology stack, the other technology stack that we have got on board. Snowflake fit quite well.
Yeah, great. And feel free to not answer this. I'm prying a little here, but did you POC other tools out there, or you only POC'd Snowflake?
We did. I think we.
You don't have to say what. I'm just curious. A yes or no is fine if you're not comfortable.
There was an evaluation project that happened. That was before my time. So before my time at Momentum. So they did go through another POC as well.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Are there real-time CDC happening in Snowflake from your source system? And what tools do you use, or it says do you use, but I think you said you're not doing anything too real-time at the moment, or do you plan to use in terms of capturing that real-time data?
At this stage, we're not using that real-time data. So we don't really use anything, but in future, if we have the need, then we will evaluate based on the requirements and the necessity or what really business needs on that aspect.
Yeah, great. Did you keep your original models, in terms of the data models, I guess this is relating to when you moved to Snowflake, or did you do a redesign?
It's a complete redesign. We did it because it was quite old and legacy. So we did a complete redesign. Everything is new.
Makes sense. It's an opportunity, right? It's the kind of work no one's going to do unless you move to a new platform. Yeah.
It was just like moving to a new house and then build it exactly the way you want it without a lot of clutter as you would normally carry. So yeah.
Absolutely. And what's the expected latency / delay from raw to modeled or usable data?
It depends on the requirement. Initially, when we were designing that, obviously, it took time while we were designing our goal layer and the work zone or the business layer. But now, since we have everything streamlined, everything processed, it's quite quick. Like literally Monday, you put in a request, Thursday, you have that data available because Thursdays is our deployment day. So, Monday you put in a request, that week you can test it in pre-prod and things like that. And, coming Monday, you will have that data available. That's the kind of the speed or, the easy stuff we are aiming, or we try to get it back to the business. So it's quite big.
I'm not sure, the question is, I guess I read the question a little different way, and I might have read it wrong. I think you could read it two ways, the way I read it. So, thanks for the answer, and I think that's really insightful. But the way I read it was more about, if you're loading, on a daily job or on a, every hour job or whatever it is, data into that raw layer, how long does it then take to be in the usable layer? Is that instant? Is there a lag there?
It's instant. So it happens in our overnightly jobs that we have got. So it just flows through all the different layers, all in all. Yeah. So it just flows through. It doesn't wait or, once in a week it happens. It happens seamlessly. Yeah.
Perfect. And I think you were probably right, but I thought I'd ask the other perspective there just in case. Then any tips and advice on monitoring? This is a good question on monitoring and credit chargeback. So how do you sort of keep track on, your utilization, your spend, and everything around that?
So we do have different warehouses developed for the business, and we have a Power BI report based on the usage stats, and also that way we can keep a track on, then charge back to the businesses when we have to.
Great. So last orders at the bar, everyone. I don't know if that's an English phrase or not, but anyway, hopefully people understand what I'm saying. We're out of questions. If anyone's got any last minute thing they want to ask, be quick. But otherwise, we will say thank you very much to Bhavika. That was fantastic. Really appreciate your input, your insights. Really good presentation, and you handled the questions. That was really fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for joining again. Thanks.
Cool. Okay. And yeah, no more questions seem to be coming in. It's just lots of thanks. So thank you, everybody, for sharing as well and asking the questions. That was really, really great. So now we're going to move on. I'm going to go back and share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that. Can I get a nod or something from?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Yes, cool. Okay, it's always awkward on Zoom. Anyway, I'm going to talk through a bit of a Snowflake roadmap. I'm going to dive through this pretty quickly because we had a lot of questions, but I'm not complaining there. I think it was really important to get to hear what Bhavika had to say. But yeah, I'm going to try and skim through to get through as much as we can. Some of what I'm going to show you is true roadmap. Some is, already in public preview, but it's new. So, you may or may not be familiar with it. Some is in private preview. So it's just a sort of overview of, some new things and some upcoming things in Snowflake. So just a safe harbor and disclaimer. Basically, when we're talking roadmap, we're not making commitments, right? It's, this is our current plan. Please don't make any major business decisions based on what you see here. Things can change as we maybe take a change of direction. Timelines are not set in stone, etc., etc. So with this may be a slide you've seen before, but with Snowflake, we break the platform into sort of 6 key workloads, and I think you can then, this is my take on it, you can sort of take that and then split it in 2 again. So, we've got the kind of core workloads, if you like, the data engineering, the data lake, the data warehouse. And these, obviously feed into each other. Your data engineering links your data lake and data warehouse together, for example. But they really they're the foundation for, then being able to do your data science, having your data applications sit on top of that. And, the data exchange, which is the data sharing component of Snowflake, that's, that leverages, that data warehouse, the data lake, and, the whole piece. So that ties into how we define our roadmap, which we essentially break into 4 different pillars. We've got global Snowflake, core platform leadership. I won't talk through them all, but as you can see, within these categories, and these are just categories, right? They, there's a fair degree of overlap, but this is just a nice way of categorizing things so that we can talk to them in sort of nice, neat little areas. So that's what I'm going to go through. I'm going to kick off with global Snowflake, which covers all of the workloads. So just a brief slide on where we exist in terms of the platforms, the cloud platforms that we are on. And, you're probably familiar with a lot of these. The key things to point out, given this is an APAC audience, is we do have coming up in H2 an AWS in Japan, and H1 we've got a Azure coming up in Japan as well. Moving on to compliance, again, some of this isn't going to be too relevant to the audience here, but one key thing, if we do have anyone from the government, is we are now IRAP compliant for Australian government. So that's a really key compliance that we've achieved recently. And then account management. So quite recently, we introduced the idea and capability of organizations. So an organization, for those that aren't familiar, is something that sits above the account level. So, you have a Snowflake account, that's where you do your work, but maybe you're an international organization and you've got Snowflake instances in America, in Europe and in APAC, and you want to have a central point that manages all of these, geographical instances, which is just an example. It could be business units. It could be, it's a different way to essentially segment and separate your Snowflake instances. So you can have an organizational level manage all of these accounts, which gives you as an org admin, which is kind of, similar to an account admin, but obviously at the organization level, the ability to manage all of those accounts. And that includes, billing, looking after the whole consolidated billing, getting insights into the usage across those accounts, and, self-service for account management as well. So you can create new accounts within your organization rather than having to ask Snowflake to create a new account for you. Then sort of leveraging off that concept of organizations and accounts is replication. So we can replicate, this is an example of Acme, who have headquarters in California, and they have accounts within that organization on the East Coast and in Europe, and they want to be able to replicate that data. So, they don't want their European users reading Snowflake from West Coast US, because it's got to travel across the Atlantic and across America to, and it's going to slow things down, of course. So what we can do is we take our database that's in California, and we just create replicas in other regions. And the first time we do that replication, of course, it's got to be a full data load. But thereafter, if we just do a refresh of that, we're just going to take the incremental changes since we did that initial replica or the last refresh. In terms of core platform leadership, so I would imagine most people here have at least heard of Snowsight. Curious, we can try a show of hands. I don't know how well it's going to work. Does anybody use Snowsight very regularly? I'm trying to have a look, see if anyone's waving their hands at me. One or two. But anyway, for those that aren't familiar, Snowsight is it's a new UI available. It's currently in public preview. It's available for use now in that public preview mode. And it's a UI essentially for data analysis. So it gives you the ability to create, charts and dashboards from your SQL. So, arguably, not even arguably, definitely something that's traditionally handled by your BI tool. But, you don't necessarily give your BI tool, if you're paying a per user license or something like this, you wouldn't necessarily give that BI tool to your ETL developers or to your DBAs or whatever. So, they're kind of missing out on some functionality that could be really useful to them. And Snowsight does give you that ability. So they can, look at the data, manipulate that data, create a dashboard, create some visual insights. Of course, some things you can only really get from visualizing the data, not from just looking at big rows of, a big grid of data with 1 billion records in it. And you can also share that. So, if you find something useful that's insightful that you want to share across the organization, you can share that dashboard, you can share that piece of SQL that might be useful to other people. So it's a really nice way to interact with others and get that collaboration going across Snowflake. Something else that's there is automatic stats. So as you query within Snowsight, you get a little kind of data profile. So you can look at, an example is, if you're seeing a lot of null values there and you weren't expecting null values, you'll see that in a little histogram thing. You can click on that. It's going to show you those records. So you can quickly start delving into where these nulls are, and from there, obviously, trying to understand why they exist when you weren't expecting them.
Paul, there's been a question in the chat. Is there a license fee or usage fee for using Snowsight?
So there's no license fee. It's, if you have Snowflake, you're welcome to go and start using it right now. There is a usage fee, but just in the sense of the same as any other query would have a usage fee on Snowflake. So, to run these queries, you're going to need a warehouse, and, If you have a small warehouse, that's going to cost you the same as running that query in the traditional interface would cost you.
Thank you, Paul. And another one came through. Is Snowsight the same as the preview app?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Perfect.
I mean, Snowsight's a component. I mean, yes, I'm saying that slightly lazily. I apologize. Snowsight is a component of that preview app. Yes. So, if I jump over to this slide, that might make that a bit more transparent. So this is just an example of a query in Snowsight where, simple query against the city bike database that you might be familiar with. And, what we've done here, the default will be to just show you the results, which is going to give you that grid of data. But instead of that, we've chosen this to be a chart. We've chosen it to be a bar chart. We can, obviously change this from a bar to, a trend chart, a scatter plot, whatever's appropriate for the data we're looking at, and then change, the appearance of this and manipulate this to our, to represent what we want. So to the asker of that question, that's, that probably looks a little familiar if you're familiar with the preview app.
I've got another one. Will the administrative capabilities provided by the Snowflake Web UI remain in the Snowflake Web UI, or is the UI going to eventually be deprecated?
Good question. That's going to be partially answered in the next slide. So I'll ask you to hold fire slightly, but remind me, please, Rena, if I skip over that, I don't answer it fully. I'll skip over this one quickly anyway, because we don't have a huge amount of time, and it's it's basically just a dashboard that's been built off various visualizations from Snowsight. So let's jump over to that. And there is a new admin UI currently available in private preview. It gives increased capability versus what's currently there in that preview app. We've got this tree-like structure that we can navigate down. It's a cleaner user experience. And the aim is to be able to do everything here that we can do in the classic UI, but it's not there at the moment. And, certainly in the, I don't want to say what's going to happen in, a year's time or 2 years' time, but certainly in the near future, that old interface is, you're going to have both options. So if you still prefer that old interface, that is absolutely still going to be available to you. And yeah. Search optimization service. So this is something that's recently been moved to public preview, and this gives us essentially an improved performance on point lookup queries. It's mainly on large tables, right? So if we've got a point lookup query, we're doing we've got a terabyte plus table. We're doing a where clause in that, and the results of that query are returning a fairly small number of rows. So we're looking through a huge set of data. We're returning a small set of data. We're trying to sort of, look for that needle in a haystack kind of thing. We can turn on the search optimization service on that table, and that will improve the performance, or well, I should say, should improve the performance of that table. With any performance improvement, I would never make an assumption it's going to make an improvement. I would, do a test, run it as it is, make the change, run it again. Did we see an improvement? Because theory and reality don't always line up. So yeah, but this certainly seems to improve in the vast majority of cases, give a fairly decent improvement on those point lookup queries. Currently, it does work with where we're looking for an equals, but we will be supporting like and I like in the not too distant future, and also be bringing in support for JSON variant data types. This one is, I don't know, from my understanding, maybe our most requested feature, and it comes back to a question that was asked of Bhavika. The fact of having to create stored procedures in JavaScript, and she mentioned she had a little bit of resistance from her DBAs and or I'm not sure if it was DBAs or data engineers who were developing those stored procs. JavaScript isn't a language that every data professional uses, whereas SQL is. So we are currently in private preview releasing the ability to have stored procedures in SQL. So I think this is going to be a big deal for a lot of customers. It's something that a lot of customers have certainly been asking for, and it's going to have the key functionality you would be expecting in a stored proc. If then else, case statements, looping, exception handling, etc., etc. So a real big win. And pretty exciting to see that coming through the private preview and hopefully into public preview in the not too distant future.
Paul, another question for you back to Snowsight. So when will Snowsight / the preview app support org account custom URLs, and when is the GA for this product?
That's a bit of $1 million question. GA is not something I am privy to, unfortunately. What I would suggest is, assuming the whoever's asked that question is a Snowflake customer, I would suggest reaching out to your account team and seeing if you could get some insight, direct insight that's relevant to your specific use case there. If you're not a customer and you're looking at Snowflake, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn and I can try and find out an answer for you. Or, we're not going to get a definitive answer for GA because, these things change, but we can try and, provide you some estimates at least. I'm conscious we're getting close to the hour. Rena, thank you for keeping the questions going. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep running through this until we're basically a couple of minutes away from the hour, and then we'll just start wrapping up. But
thank you, Paul. Sorry, following from the previous question, you answered the second half of the question around the GA, but the question does ask about the URL support.
I mean, same would apply there, to be honest. I'm not sure of the answer to that. I can certainly try and look into it, but off the top of my head, yeah, I'm not sure.
Thanks, Paul.
No worries. Governance and security, so dynamic data masking, and this is something we touched on very briefly with Bhavika as well. The ability to store the data, if we've got PII data, we want certain users to be able to see that data because they have permissions to, other users do not have permissions. Sort of a traditional brute force approach to this problem from a BI perspective was, let's have two versions of the same dashboard. It's not a very elegant solution. It works, but it's clunky. It's fine if you've got a couple of dashboards, but if you've got 20, 50, 100 dashboards and you need to make a change, it becomes pretty unsustainable. And really this sort of thing should be solved at the source, right? And so that's what we're doing with Snowflake. We can create a policy that applies, to different roles and say, if you're in a role that is allowed to see this data, we're going to show you that data. If your role is a role that's not permitted to see the underlying PII information, then you're going to see a masked version of this. So then, of course, if we've got BI reports, whatever, a freehand SQL editor, a custom app using a JDBC connection, whatever it is that's sitting on top of Snowflake is going to inherit those rules. So we're not having to replicate that logic in multiple places to handle this problem. It's done at the source, and whatever sits on that source is just going to inherit that. There's a quick example of doing that, but I'm very conscious we are pretty much out of time and I don't want to run over. So I'm going to jump to the end and just see if there are any final questions before we wrap up. I've lost my Zoom window, Rena. Can you you help me out? Is there anything popping up? Oh, there we go.
Another question for you, Paul, probably one of the last ones. How about timing of tagging for RLS?
So that is a future slide that I actually didn't get to. Sorry about that. But yes, RLS, if I can jump to it. is on the roadmap. Where are we? So currently in private preview, I don't have a timing for when that's likely to hit public preview, but yes, it's on the way, and it's definitely something we're working on.
Great. Thank you for all the engaging questions. I think we'll wrap up here now.
Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. Hope that was useful. Thanks again to Bhavika, and yeah, hope everyone has a good day. And like I said, if you do have any follow-up questions, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if there's anything I didn't answer or if you want to follow up with more detail, yeah, just feel free to reach out. And yeah, thank you, everybody.